Welcome to the clubhouse. My name is Alice and I've got something super fun to show you today. We're going to get into some printmaking. Yay! Now I realize that can mean one of about 1 billion different things, since you can, after all, print with everything from manhole covers and old bed sheets to potatoes and steamrollers. But here and now, we're going to be talking specifically about relief printing with some easy to cut materials to lower that barrier of entry. I think I've quoted our friend Joseph from Drive By Press before, but it bears repeating. Printmaking is the most democratic of art forms. With a little knowledge and a little practice, anyone can make an edition of prints. So since this is going to be one of our more in-depth dives, we here in the clubhouse thought it might be smart to make this a multi-part video. Some of the ideas and techniques that we use will be useful to you for any type of printmaking, and some of them will really only pertain to this process. And speaking of this process, this is what you will need to get started. So speedy carve, which we have here, block cutting tools, your image, an iron, pencil, marker, and a craft knife. All right, before we start talking about blades and inks and brayers, we need to talk about your image. Firstly, I have to say, photos are not going to work for you. There are processes that will allow you to use a bunch of dots or lines to simulate a photo, but you can just use your inkjet printer if you merely want to print a photo, right? But we want to teach you a simpler process. This process will give us a more handmade feel because you'll be making it with your hands. Michael said that when he was first being taught to screen print, he didn't even touch a screen for the first 3 weeks of class. Whoa. They weren't even taught how to use photos until the second semester. All right, now that I've told you all the don'ts, let's get into the do's. The best images with which to start your printing career are the simple ones. Now, I'm not talking about details here. I'm talking about how the image is made. You're going to have the best luck with images that don't require any interpretation of grays. Images that are just black and white, like my dang. All right, now that you have some guidance on your image selection, let's take a look at this speedy card stuff. This carving material is great for beginners. It's inexpensive and really easy to carve into, and with sharp tools, you can get really fine details. You'll be able to print these on fabric or paper just by changing the type of ink you use. You can even use the same stamp pads used for rubber stamps. Now you'll notice that this material is the same color all the way through. So as you cut, it becomes a little harder to see what's cut and what's not. So a little trick from the block carving experts is to color your block before you transfer your image to it. Now make sure you choose a lighter color marker so you can still see your transferred image. All right, pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to iron my toner image onto the speedy carve. Want to know all about that? We made another video. You want your image on the speedy carve to be backwards so that it prints right reading. For some images, it may not matter much, but be especially careful you don't forget to do this if you're carving words. So before I start carving, I'll take a good look at my block. I make sure that I know what I'm going to be carving or removing and what I'm leaving to be printed. Some people also use little X's to mark the areas to cut out. So in my case, I'm removing all of this orange stuff. I'll also keep that original image nearby to reference. Okay, y'all, this is your last chance to check that you have transferred correctly. Remember, your image should look backwards. Did I say that twice? Yup, because I've totally made this mistake at least twice. Ouch. All right, so block carving tools come in a ton of different styles. We are using these. I like them a lot, straight like a pencil. These are student grade, but they work fantastic. I do also have these. They also call these student grade, but they're a big upgrade. And you can see it's got a different kind of barrel on there. So if you have trouble holding on to these tools, an upgrade to something different might really help. This one by Speedball, the carving bit looks a little bit different from what I'm used to, but this can be quite a bit easier to hold. Oh, kind of clever. You get the same kind of blades. There's 5 blades hang out in here, and then you change them just like you do with an X-Acto. Now the set of tools in your kit, these, they come with 5 different style knives. I mostly only use 2, the U-gouge and the V-gouge, and you guessed it, one of those blades looks like a U and one of them looks like a V. Can you tell? So this is the U, it's got a curved bottom, and this is the V, it comes to a point. You may find ways to hold the tool that are more comfortable to you once you start working, but if this feels totally foreign to you, this is what works for me. Open your hand, you're gonna place the butt of the tool in the center of your palm, resting the tool along your index finger. I've got that U flipped upside down, so I'm looking at the top of that hump. Close your fingers and your thumb around it. Now you're gonna flip your hand over. This position lets you use the palm of your hand to push the tool through the material while you guide it with your index finger. So let's do some practical stuff. If you're cutting a curve, you'll want to cut a little, pause, turn your block, and then cut a little more. This will help make a smooth cut rather than turning your whole arm or your body. This is where that non-cutting hand really comes in handy. Ha! Handy. All right. Here's a trick to cut sharp, square, inside corners. We're gonna cut into the corner from each direction. So I'm gonna cut this way. I'm gonna pull that blade out, and I'm gonna come at that corner from the opposite direction, using my index finger to kind of guide that line all the way to the opposite line. Now, sometimes those will come right out. If they don't, you may need to turn and cut again from this side until you get all that speedy carve out of there. You don't ever want to tear the material. That'll leave you with a non-sharp edge. Now, if you want to cut an acute angle, you actually do the exact opposite. So instead of cutting into the angle, we're going to cut away from it, and we're going to use the V gouge instead of the U gouge. That's going to give me a nice, crisp point. Now, both tools will also make texture marks. I'm going to grab my U gouge and I'm going to place it on my material. Here's the trick. I'm going to spin that speedy carve around the edge of my tool. What? I got a circle. Let's do it again. So I'm going to spin that speedy carve. Fun little circles. All right. Using the U gouge from two directions will give you more kind of oval shapes. And these can be kind of any width you want. You can do larger or narrower, but building these up in an area can really make some awesome texture. Color those in so you can really kind of see what's going to print. What this does is allow me to see my cut line in sharp contrast to the pink. I also will use what I call up and out. I don't know if there's a better way to describe that, but that's basically coming into the speedy carve and sort of flipping it right back out. All right, I think that's enough practice. On to my stamp. Dang. So I like to start by cutting the outside edges of my image area, and then I'll carve away all the negative or non-printing areas. If you're nervous, you can start a little bit away from your line and then creep up on it. Now, while I'm carving, I keep my non-carving hand on or behind the block so I don't accidentally gouge myself. So the U gouge is used to carve larger, wider lines or marks. The V gouge is used for finer, sharper lines. If I'm getting into some really intricate work, I find that using the index finger of my non-carving hand makes an excellent guide for the tip. So you don't need to cut deep for your image to print. The angle you hold your tool determines how much material you remove as you carve. You'll want to be careful to not work with your hands so high that the tips of the blade are completely embedded in the speedy carve. If you do, you'll be tearing through the material instead of cutting a crisp edge. So even the best carvers will tell you that mistakes can happen while you're carving. Cutting a block is a reductive process, and unfortunately, you can't add the material back. Once it's gone, it's gone. The best course of action, if you make a mistake, is to put your tool down and take a look at your image. Oftentimes, when you step back, you'll see a way to make the mistake blend in. Okay, so once you've carved all that negative space, you're ready to trim your stamp. Yay! I like to remove some of that outside area. I'm using a craft knife, and I try carefully to hold that straight up and down. Cuts like butter, y'all. So now I'm going to use my U gouge to cut around this edge at a 45-degree angle. This will give me a cleaner print. So I'm holding my tool at an angle, and I'm just kind of taking that sharp edge of the stamp off. And all the way around. All right, she's all trimmed up and ready for testing. So we're gonna grab a stamp pad and some newsprint to test our stamp. Oh, just look at that. That's beautiful. Now, often you'll find areas in your stamp that still need a little more carving when you do this test. You're just gonna fuss that until you're happy with it. You can use your stamped image as a guide for where those lines are, but you can also find them on your block by looking for the high points where there's a little ink. Once you get it printing nice and clean, you're ready to print on something fun. I'm going to show you some tricks for fabric printing next. Want to know all about that? Well, then you should go subscribe so that you'll be sure to see the next episode all about printing on fabric. Until that wonderful day comes, this is Alice signing off from our Summer Avenue Clubhouse. See you soon!